Yesterday in worship, we had a lovely guest preacher, Reverend Ramonica Malone Wardley from the annual conference. And one of the things she talked about was, how do we know when we've done something wrong, or when we've always done something and we realize, oh, that's not the best thing to do. So I was trying to think of like times when I was wrong, which is, to be fair, very often and usually math related. I know I asked you about it, and then you immediately told me this afternoon that you couldn't think of any times that you were wrong.
I think it's more because I am very cautious and I don't do things unless I know I'm right, which may be wrong to do things that way, like not stepping out of my comfort zone.
Well, I still think that's terribly impressive that you were so often right, because I'm just running around like a crazy person making decisions left and right, willy-nilly. So what was one time that you have been wrong?
So one time, and it's kind of silly, but several years ago, I was making some cinnamon toast for a snack. Mm-hmm. I've made that for a snack since I was a kid, and not really paying attention. My boys were at home. They may have been distracting me. Anyway, I made it, and then when I went to go bite into it, it was the most awful thing I have ever tasted, because I had used cumin instead of the cinnamon.
That's excellent.
So that was, not that using the wrong ingredients.
Yeah, that's fair. That's super fair. I've done that with like baking soda versus baking powder.
And I've heard like using salt
instead of sugar. Yeah, mm-hmm. Those are fairly common baking mistakes. I literally had a hard time narrowing the list because I have so many times where I've done something wrong. And I tend to do something wrong with confidence, with like a lot of confidence. Mm-hmm. So I thought of the time that I was 100% sure that that something was in the diaper bag, like this particular bottle. Mm. Because you know how the kid gets like obsessed with like one kind of, I was like, it's in there. And I don't know if you and Chris were like this, but Stephen and I have this lovely thing where I'm consistently sure that he's just not looking.
Yes.
And we call it the man look, right? And I will be like, I'm going to come behind you and find it, and I'm going to be, frustrated. And so we were arguing about it, and I was like, I know that it's in there. I saw it in there. And we had a good long conversation about it, and even like a little bit of a come to Jesus about how it's like really not fair for him to consistently expect me to know where everything is. It wasn't there. It had never been there as far as I could tell. And to this day, we don't know where that thing is. So, but I was very confident and very wrong. And there's times that are more serious. Like one of the things I feel like, this is more serious, so not to be a bummer, but one of the things I immediately think about, like in ministry, the things I feel like I was wrong about, I used to be such a weird stickler, you probably remember this, for dress code. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, oh no, I had that wrong. And that it's like such a random thing, but like I think about that frequently. Which, to be fair, anytime I do anything embarrassing, I will think about it every day for the rest of my life. Yes. The time I tripped and fell into a door, I will think about that. Do you not trip and fall into things, Allison?
I do on occasion.
Oh,
but yeah, I'm just cautious.
I clearly need some of that in my life.
I didn't realize how cautious and careful I was until I agreed to talk to you today.
Well, I appreciate that you did. Thank you so much. And we're not just talking about weird things that we did wrong, or how, out of it I clearly am, and how much I need your guidance. But we're going to be talking about what it means for the Spirit to move and for us to listen. I'm Becca. I'm the pastor of family ministries here at Katy First, and today we have a special co-host, Allison Dominguez. Allison has been a member of Katy First since 2008, and she currently serves as the Ministry Council Chair for our church. So thank you so much for being here. You want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I have 2 sons who are 23 and 26 years old. We've lived in Katy since 2003, and I currently work as a librarian at Rains Academy in Katy ISD, and that is the high school for at-risk students who are at risk of dropping out.
Yeah. Well, 2 things. One, I absolutely love both your boys. And it is such a, like, Nick is one of our Sunday night youth volunteers. And it is a delight to me every single week because it's like, it just feels so full circle since he was like a little kid when I was here last time. And I realized last night that I keep introducing him that way. And this one lady was like, every time I see him, you tell me this story, Becca. Like, I know who he is. Please stop.
Yes,
but
he loves helping with the youth, and it makes me happy because I was a volunteer when both of them were in the youth group. And so to see him continue on and to grow himself has been a blessing to see.
Yeah. And you are like our organizer of liturgists, right? I don't know what that official title is.
I think it is lay leader.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Yes.
So that's partly why we wanted to have you on the podcast, let people like see your face, hear your voice, just somebody who's being a leader in our church in a lot of different ways, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So welcome to the Katy First Family Podcast, where we offer ideas, inspiration, and encouragement to help you and your family grow as joyful disciples of Jesus Christ. And this week we are talking about Acts 10 and when the Spirit moves. So this was the 5th week. I think I've done, maybe it was the 6th. I think it was the 6th week.
I believe 6.
The 6th week of our Greatest Hits worship series. 6 weeks. Oh my goodness, I can't even handle it emotionally. And we were so lucky and blessed to have the assistant to the bishop for our annual conference, Reverend Ramonica Malone Wardley. And she is an outstanding human, first of all. Just like as a person, I find her lovely. And she's an excellent preacher. And I just thought her sermon was
very exciting and inspirational.
Yeah, 100%. I felt like she was super inspirational. And so she read from Acts 10, and it's one of my favorite pieces of scripture. This story where Peter is praying, and he's also hungry, which I just love the like very humanness of that.
Yes.
He's hungry, and he has this sort of trance dream where things come down on a sheet, and he hears God's voice to go ahead and kill and eat. And he's like, hey, I don't eat this stuff because I keep kosher. This is all clearly very paraphrased. And so God tells him again, no, kill and eat. And then finally, and I always get the line a little wrong, but he says, don't call profane what God has called clean. And it's this really important moment in the scripture here in Acts where we kind of shift and see that God is doing a new thing. And it's tricky, I think, for us in our minds, or for a lot of us at least, we have this idea of what it means to be a Christian and what it meant to be an early Christian. But really, the first early Christians were Jewish, just like Jesus was Jewish. And so the idea of keeping the Jewish traditions would have been really ingrained. To veer away from that would have been incredibly difficult for Peter and would have not felt like faithful living. And so for him to really listen to how the Spirit was calling him to what God was telling him to do, that had to have been really hard. And Ramonica's words about when the Spirit of God moves, that things change, and the people of God have to be listening for that. And I think that was such a, I think you said it earlier, like a challenging but really inspiring message for all of us of, hey, how is the Spirit moving, and how is the Spirit moving us, and are we willing to listen to that?
Yeah. So one of the things that stuck out to me was when she said that you have to listen for the message, and it may not always be the outcome that you are wanting.
Yeah.
And but you still need to listen to that and follow.
Yeah. In fact, she said something about how, and I thought this was great, that if the Spirit is always agreeing with you, you might not be listening to the right voice.
Yes.
You might just be reinforcing your own idea.
Yes.
Which I think we've all done.
Definitely. Many times. But then, there are times where I have felt like I was being led a different direction. And it was something that was outside my comfort zone. And, I took the chance, and it turned out to be the right thing.
Yeah. I knew a lady, this is like a million years ago, but I was in this Bible study for several years. And so I got to know people pretty well. And there was this one older lady who she said that every week she prayed that God would not send her on a mission to Africa because she really didn't want to go. And I just felt like she was courting disaster. Like, she's just asking to be called to there.
Yes. It's like when you don't pray for patience because you're going to be given the opportunity to practice.
Yeah. I mean, and I like to be comfortable. And in every single way that means. I get somewhere and I'm trying to find a comfortable seat. I don't want to be too hot or too cold. I don't want to be socially uncomfortable either, or situationally uncomfortable. I think that's pretty human nature.
Yeah.
So how do we find whatever kind of faith and bravery we need in order to choose to be uncomfortable for the things that God is calling us to? And that's hard.
It is.
Yeah.
But I think that if you take a step back and you think about it and realize that if God is calling you to do something, he's going to be there to support you, and that it's not going to be as difficult as you think it's going to be.
Yeah. And that was another important part. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, of what Ramonica said, because she talked about how if you have to do it in your own power, you're toast probably.
Yeah.
Or at least it will be really difficult, but that's not what God is asking us to do. It's actually an invitation to lean into the power and the presence of God even more.
Yes.
We played some games last night at youth group. I don't know if Nick told you about it, but we played this game called back-to-back school relay, and the kids had to literally stand back-to-back, right? Mm-hmm. And then link elbows, behind. I don't know how to explain that better. And so that they had to stay connected and then do some kind of obstacle course, which was interesting because some kids were more flexible than others, or Mike, who is he was our game master. He sort of paired them up to where they were close to the same height, but it's hard, right?
Right.
And so somebody was always going to end up not equally partnered. And the teams that did really well found a way to kind of get low and to really lean on each other in a way that held each other up. And it was an accidental, I didn't know that that's where Ramonica was going to go with it, but it tied in really well.
Yeah, it did.
Just this idea of really leaning on God and trusting in the goodness of our community here as a church family. And I think one of the things that is so evident here at Katy First is the sincere desire we have as a church family to listen to the new thing that God is calling us to.
Yes.
But it can be hard to hear. And we all know that we don't all agree on everything. And that's okay. We're okay with that kind of uncomfortableness. But what does that mean for how we move forward?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And I think it's tough to do in our families too. How do we listen to what God is calling us to as a family? I think especially here at the start of a new school year, for families, what does it look like to order your days as a family in a way that's faithful to all the things you're called to? It's tough.
Yes. And you've got to have new schedules to follow, and how does everything fit in, and still have that family time, have the time to worship, and really try to figure out all of that.
Yeah.
It is hard.
Yeah. As somebody who is cautious, self-proclaimed, I'm not titling you, and, somebody who thinks things through, as you were raising your boys, who are both excellent human beings, so good job.
Thank you.
You did a good job. How did you guys kind of, when you were going through making decisions or trying to figure things out, was there some kind of guiding principle you used or any strategies that were helpful?
It was just the keeping us organized and knowing that Sundays were going to be church days. Mm-hmm. And I had a calendar that each person in the family had a different color, so it was all color coded.
Yeah. And
we would know where everybody had to be at a certain time or a certain day, but knowing that weekends were really family time. Sundays were going to be church. When they got into youth group, it was celebration singers and youth group. And then during the summer, they always did Army. Just keeping them involved in these activities, whether it was volunteering for Mad Camp, but getting them involved with these activities, especially from a young age. I think that helped them to grow, and that they knew how important it was when they were younger, that they wanted to help out when they were older. Mm-hmm.
No, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then also I think too, in your role as our ministries chair, which our ministry council is literally just the group of people who are
the leader of every different ministry we have.
Which we have a lot.
Yes. I did not realize how many we had before I took this position.
Yeah. And I think it's probably true for most people. We don't realize how many things our church is doing on a regular basis. And that group, the ministry council, trying to get together and thoughtfully discern, okay, so how can we all work together to sort of achieve the vision of the church, the mission of the church?
Yes.
It's all good things.
Yes.
And it's a constantly moving target.
It is, trying to make sure that every group has what they need. If we need volunteers, what are ways that we can recruit them? When we do like the family night in the pumpkin patch, is there going to be enough people that are providing their cars and candy for trunk or treat or whatever activity we're doing? Like the Build a Bed in September, trying to get enough volunteers for that. And things that we want to do to help the community and making sure that we are focused on those goals.
Yeah. And I think if as a church, if we all are sort of praying the same prayer, that we would hear God's voice and offering us direction, and be willing to respond to that, I think we'll continue to see really powerful things happen from that. I feel like we've already seen that start. But I think more and more, I'm just excited for how we will see God continue to move as we listen faithfully to the Spirit. So I appreciate you being here with us today, Allison. I know I keep putting people on the spot. I'm like, I'll see people after church and I'm like, hey, would you like to do the podcast?
No, it's fine.
It's fine.
What's funny is sitting there, like before the service even began, I think I was sitting up there, and I sit in the balcony, and I thought, I wonder who's going to be on the podcast this week.
It's you.
So, you get those messages sometimes, and that's, so when you asked, I'm like, okay, was that the message from God to do this and to,
And you listened and responded. I'm so proud.
That's why I hesitated for a second, because I'm like, okay, was that God talking to me earlier and I need to do this? So
good for you. Hey, way to follow through. I think Reverend Ramonica would be very, very impressed, very encouraged.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope that you have found some inspiration and encouragement for yourself and for your family. If you'd like to get these weekly podcasts delivered directly to you, you can subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. For more information about Katy First and all of the things that we have going on, you can go to our website, katyfirst.org. Most importantly, we want you to know that in the middle of your ordinary, messy life, whatever that looks like for you today, that you are loved, You are not alone, and you are doing a good job. We hope you'll join us this Sunday in worship at 11 o'clock, and be back here next week to join us on the Katy First Family Podcast. Until then, have a great week.